Just because something is absurd and seemingly random doesn't mean that it is meaningless. The play Ubuwa is considered a harbinger of the soon to come age of modernism and surrealism in the arts, but while it is a very silly play, it is also intelligible, and I would argue that it has allegorical import that's very relevant to our society today. Ubuwa's plot is based on Macbeth. It features a husband and wife deciding to slay their king. The main character, Ubu, is a weirdo glutton with a big spiral on his belly who is obsessed with food, gold, and saying the word, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, merde. And that refers to defecation, of course. From a Christian perspective, the vulgarity present in the play might seem a little shocking, but it's important to note that not everyone in the play is as vulgar as the main character. The nobles aren't this way, and that signifies, I think, that a code of politeness can't truly exist without authority. As part of his rebellion against the rightful king, Ubu breaks down all such codes because he is a vulgar man representing the insidious power, I think, of finance. There's an interesting change in the tone of the language, if not the performance, depending on how it's performed, when the royals are depicted. In Act 2, Scene 5, the dying queen and her son take shelter in a cave, lamenting the fact that they've been reduced from the highest blood in the land to criminal fugitive status. But it's the most sincere scene in the play, I would think, just from having read it. As his mother dies, Bourgeois, I suppose you could pronounce his name, Bouchelas, is visited by the ghosts of his noble ancestors who hand him a sword to rise up against the wicked usurper who has killed his father. Interestingly, as soon as Ubu gets power, his wife convinces him to give away all of the king's gold. Even though Ubu is very greedy, he doesn't know how else to control people except for giving them money. Of course, the people all begin to fight over the gold, and so Ubu and his team create athletic competitions and feasts to try and keep everybody distracted, but they still don't have any money left, so then he needs to go around slaying all the noblemen and appropriating their wealth. And he says he's going to subject the nobles to a debraining operation, in the translation I read, in his torture dungeon. It sort of becomes a communistic revolution that way, melting down all of society into pure appetite and charging people as guilty just based on how much wealth they have, and undoing all justice and basically betraying everyone, even his co-conspirators. This isn't the only way that the play could be interpreted, but it's not hard to read it as a criticism of revolutionary democracies and how they can lead to the tyranny of finance if the worst kind of people seize power. So here we can see that in one of these foundational texts of modernism and surrealism, we're having a message that is potentially very harmonious with the traditional hierarchical worldview of Christendom. If you sort of take it from sort of the opposite view that most people, I think, are interpreting it. And I'm not contending that Jerry, the playwright, held that as his authorial intent necessarily, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did, because I think that most people assume that modernism and surrealism in the arts inherently has this kind of left-wing bent to it. But I think it's just as likely sometimes when you dig into some of these texts that you can view them from the flip side and realize, no, actually, this piece of art, even if it's avant-garde or revolutionary in a particular sense, it can totally be viewed as also simultaneously very traditionalist and supporting authority and hierarchy and all these different things. Essentially what we have in Ubuwa is the portrait of a society whose sense of justice totally collapses because vulgar gluttons seize control of the government and push out the noble-souled aristocrats. Now, was the reign of this king perfect? Probably not, since he made enemies who wanted to overthrow him. But the king is named after, good King Wenceslas for a reason. So we can read it as an allegory for how the overthrow of monarchies in Western civilization have steered us towards a more communistic, warmongering, and less just society. It's an interesting detail When Ubu betrays his co-conspirator, Captain Bordur, where does he go? He goes to Russia, which makes sense as Russia is right next to Poland, where the story is set, but it seems like Russia has this archetypal, symbolic characteristic in literature as always being the bastion of monarchical, authoritarian values. It's telling that the character of Ubu was based on a school teacher that the playwright and his friends had as a boy. Today, I think you can easily say that we live under a tyranny of school teachers who are enormous gluttons and vulgar souls who want to impose insanity onto all the rest of us. And they do so with the power of the knights of finance, as Ubu does. Now, perhaps all we can do is hope that princely souls might rise up to defend us against the rapacious appetites of our rulers.